Hey everybody, Dawn Zoldi here, CEO of P3 Tech Consulting and your host for the Dawn of Drones podcast. We are in a month dedicated to this theme of innovation, sponsored by Caresoft, and we are honored to have with us two incredible guests from D-Fend Solutions. This is part 3 of 4 of a D-Fend series this year, and today we are focused on airport security in particular. So I'm going to have our guests introduce themselves first, and we're going to start with Ilana. So Ilana, please let everybody know a little bit about yourself.
Sure, great. Hi. Thank you for having me and us, of course. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in Israel, and after my military service, and obviously to me, some much needed travel, I started working for the Israeli Customs and Border Protection at Ben Gurion Airport. After a few years, I worked for the Israeli Aviation Authority in New York and in Europe. In New York, I was assigned to JFK Airport and worked a little bit at Newark Airport. And then after a few years there, and before joining D-Fend in 2021, I worked here locally in the DC metro area at the American Association of Airport Executives, AAE, with various airport executives. Since joining D-Fend, I've been leading the U.S. commercial aviation sector practice, been engaging with various security and operational staff across the United States, as well as different government and officials and security agencies like FAA and TSA, and pretty much discussing and raising the rapidly rising threat of rogue drones and how best detect and mitigate, hopefully, right, UAS in this sensitive airport environment. So thank you for having me.
Well, that's amazing, and you can see why Ilana is an expert, as is Mark. So Mark is coming to us from the UK, whereas Ilana is in DC. So Mark, tell us a little bit about your background.
When I left school, I became a mechanical engineer. So I worked in engineering for a while before joining the military. And when I joined the military, I joined the parachute regiment. So my responsibility was for attacking critical national infrastructure. I then joined the Army Air Corps, where I began to fly. So I got heavily into aviation. And again, we would be attacking. So what really is unique is my role was to disrupt service and destroy with the ability to repair quickly. Or sometimes we'd attack things, so we would destroy them for a long time, so they're beyond repair. Sometimes we might want to do it. So it was really critical that I understood how to attack places like airports, and either just to do them temporary or keep them open. And then when I left the military, we started a security company with my friends, and we were red teaming, that is doing simulated attacks against airports to work out what the vulnerabilities are, and then advise them by being consultants on what they need to do to protect themselves. I sold my company. It was really successful. It was good. And then I heard about D-Fend and their product Enforce Air. And like everybody else, I'm like, nah, it's all hype. So I spoken to a couple of people in government who said it really does what it says on the tin. So then I spoke to the Defence Science and Technology Laboratories who said it really does what it says on the tin. And from that point, I got absolutely engaged with it. And I thought, right, I want some of this, because I believe that Enforce Air was just the thing that would be required to protect our airports. So I joined it with a focus on getting Enforce Air into airports to protect passengers and aircraft.
Wow, unbelievable. It's funny, as I listen to both of you, I'm thinking, wow, we've got quite the coalition here, the US Air Force, the IDF, and the UK MOD and the Army in particular. But Ilana, let's talk a little bit about your work currently. You're part of the FAA's, they're calling this the FAA UAS Detection and Mitigation Aviation Rulemaking Committee, or the ARC. I know a lot of people shorthand are calling it the Counter UAS ARC. But obviously your strong background in aviation security will contribute significantly to this committee's work. Can you tell us a little bit about the ARC and your role in it?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm really proud to represent D-Fend on the ARC. So a little bit of background on the ARC and what it is. So it was formed in response to Section 383 of the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018. So thankfully in 2023, we're here, right? Pretty much to seek recommendations from industry stakeholders in the United States on the certification and eventually understand how FAA will be permitting, authorizing, or allowing of the deployment of different technologies or systems in the of detection and mitigation systems without causing any impact to the NAS, to the national airspace, right? So the goal is the safety of the NAS at all times. This is truly a great group of people that I'm part of, and I'm very proud as well to be part of that group. And we have various working groups that focus on a range of topics from, operating requirements to different site considerations like airports, right? And I am part of that working group specifically. So our goal at each working group is to identify different opportunities for new rulemaking and then make recommendations to the FAA, right? So, but still, the main goal of everything is safety. So this ARC, the counter-UAS ARC, it goes really hand in hand with current FAA work that they're doing with the 383 program, which is the evaluation of detection and mitigation systems at 5 various airports across the United States, with the first one being the Atlantic City Tech Center, right? So we have a lot of support from FAA, and they've been great on the ARC itself. And our hope, right, that's all I can say because we're making recommendations here, is that FAA will implement our recommendations, which unfortunately I can't expand on right now. Yeah. But hopefully everyone will see our recommendations and we'll see some movement in the regulatory side.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everybody watching out there, by the way, a couple things. Number one, we are live. So, we know you're out there. Ask questions, give us positive encouragement, tell us where you're from. The second thing I want to say is Section 383 is part of the 2018 FAA Reauthorization Act. And as Ilana mentioned, the show is about airport security. That particular provision, Congress to do some testing, and I think it was 5 or 6 airports, as Ilana alluded to. And part of that was, hey, create a rulemaking committee. And so about 5 years in now, we've got the committee just started, and those authorities are expiring at the end of September with that FAA Reauthorization Act. So everybody keep an eye out for what's happening with the next reauth, because very important, as is this work. As we all know, the authorities are pretty stringent in the United States, and obviously in the UK. I talked to Martin Broomhead before from Fend about that. So moving on, let's go ahead and dive into this topic of airport deeply. I know you guys have an incredible tracker. There's been hundreds of incidents around airports. I think just in the US, there's like 100 sightings a day that pilots are reporting in the FAA system, but around the world, certainly. And so let's talk about some of those in the US and the UK. So I think we've got a slide here to show some of this. And I will go ahead and, what are the different types of dangers that drones pose to airports specifically? Why is that specific? Why is that unique?
I think the different types of dangers really are flight safety and airport and flight security, which are two different things. If you take flight safety, this safety means the outcome is not intentional. Harm is by accident. Some people don't abide by the regulations and don't see the risk and don't believe they're doing anything wrong. And others are flaunting the no-fly regulations because they believe they won't get caught, and they're ignorant of the true risk they pose to aircraft. So that's a flight safety risk. There's no real intention there. It's just by accident. And then you've got airport security and flight security. And security means the outcome's premeditated. They have intentional harm. It could be a deliberate attack by flying a drone directly at an aircraft. It could be a deliberate attack against critical airport infrastructure like the air traffic control, navigation aids, fuel farms. It could just be protesters that seek to stop operations so they can draw attention to their own cause, like air pollution, noise pollution, controversial VIP visits, etc. So they're the main real risks and how you categorize them with regards to airports.
Well, significant issues here. And you know what? I think we have a little video to show about this.
Grounded flights, missed connections, angry passengers, lost revenues. The mere threat of a drone incident can lead to serious consequences and financial impact. One impacted flight may have a domino effect, causing delays across states. Traditional technologies have a role to play in a layered defense strategy, but they are insufficient in sensitive and unique environments. Radars sometimes generate false positives. Jammer-based solutions can interfere with airports' critical communications, and kinetic solutions may result in collateral damage. Only D-Fend Solutions, with its counter-drone radio frequency-based cyber detection technology, offers continuity for airport operations. The technology has been proven at major international sites around the globe. We have all seen the chaos, from New York City to Los Angeles and many places in between. Countless airports have experienced disruption, including major near-miss incidents and full runway shutdowns. D-Fend's flagship solution, Enforce Air, seamlessly detects and, when authorized and allowed, can mitigate rogue drone threats. Flight schedules proceed as planned, backed by an autonomous system that asserts control over rogue drones and lands them safely in a designated zone as allowed by regulations and performed by authorized personnel. The solution coexists with airport communication systems. Air transportation relies on uninterrupted operations at our nation's airports. Enforce Air's proven capabilities guarantee airport business runs as usual. Continuity ensues as flights, communications, security, and everyday life in the surrounding areas proceed smoothly. Enforce Air. Control the drone to control the threat.
I'll tell you, as a frequent flyer, continuity of operations at airports is selfishly very key to to my travel, and I think to everybody's travel. And I think a case that highlights how significant a drone interruption can be. It was a recent case at Ronald Reagan National, right? Right there in DC. So I think, Ilana, I think this one's yours. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this one? This was last year, but like in the summer, and that's a big travel time.
Yeah, absolutely. We have so many, like you said, so many drone disruptions, over 100 a day, mainly from pilots that report drone sightings. But the one incident at Reagan National, even though it's not good news, it drew a lot of attention, much needed attention, right, to the risk of drone incidents at or near airports, especially with such a high visibility airport like Reagan that is located less than 2 miles from the Pentagon and only 3 miles from the White House. If we're looking at how we here in the United States address the drone disruptions, right? Even prior to this incident, the US government was leaning more forward towards battling the rogue drone issue. If we're looking at the FAA with the 383 program and the TSA as well, in parallel, doing their own DTI, detect, track, and identify evaluation. And their goal is to create an industry technologies catalog to, and even we had some legislative movement, right? I'll do this. In the form of the White House National Action Plan that, it's comprised with different elements to advance and expand detection and mitigation around the country to include airports, right, hopefully. And then there were like a few bills as well that were pushed forward, like the safeguarding of Homeland from Threats, the Act of 2022, that pretty much pushed to broaden and expand authorities to local, state, tribal law enforcement. Nothing have yet happened in any of these, right? But we do see a lot of movement still, and everything is, we should be a little bit patient, but we're hoping that incidents as such will not cause any damage, but just bring it to awareness so things can move a little bit faster than we're seeing now. Yeah.
Yeah, you raise a great point, Ilana. That Reagan National, a lot of congressional members, a lot of staffers, a lot of high-powered Washington, D.C. people fly through that airport on a daily basis. So when there's an interruption, that probably they would notice, and that might give that. I'm sure that's why that particular one got some attention here. Well, not only that, but a little too close for comfort, as you said, to the Pentagon and things like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mark, you talked a little bit about the different drone threats at airports, but I think we have a slide that I was remiss in kind of like hitting at the time. I love this. I love these graphics because this is broader than airports. And by the way, I read an article this morning. It was frightening, but I think realistic. How they're capturing some drones, or they captured some drones in Kyrgyzstan that were en route to Russia, that were very large Chinese DJI drones for agricultural spraying. And the threat there, or the supposed threat, was, chemical weapons attacks. So really, when you think about drones and how they can be a delivery vehicle or surveillance vehicle, the sky is kind of literally the limit, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it's the imagination. So if you take a terrorist or someone with malice or poor intent, they can be as creative as their imagination. They've now got an air vehicle that they can use that takes minutes to learn to fly. A lot of them you can pull straight out the box, power them up, and you can operate them straight away. And then it's just a case of some clever mechanics. What do you want to put on it, and how do you want it to work? You can add separate systems that can be remotely set up, so you can put them on, so you can fly the drone and then operate a different system. They're not hard to achieve. So I've seen things with shotguns on, bombs on side them, dropping them, as you've seen in Ukraine. It is spray cans, you name it, you can add it to it. All you need to do is have the payload. And if you've got the payload and you've got the distance, your target is there and you can use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, we've got a fan out there, Joseph Dunphy, saying that his amateur radio group supports the Red Cross and participated in common drills for airport disasters, saying this is a new wrinkle to him. So thanks for watching, Joseph. Appreciate your comments. Keep them coming, guys and gals out there. We love that. But yeah, for those that are, kind of in this industry, this is maybe not something necessarily brand new to us, but a lot of people are not aware of threat. And so I think it's a great segue into this question about drone threats and incidents, specifically at airports. In your interactions with them, how do the airport operators see this threat? What are their main concerns?
Yeah, so obviously to me, right? Maybe. While operating in an airport, there's so many implications in case of a drone incident or even a drone sighting from, and again, maybe obvious to me, but grounded flights or missed connections that impact the passengers, the airline, and even the concern of having a bad reputation, right? The airport having a bad reputation as a result of all these shutdowns. But it is important to note and understand that airports have become such large and very central ecosystems that an impact of a drone is not just felt by the airport or the airline themselves, but also by the communities these airports serve, right? So airports actually facilitate various economic activities that, I'll call it, bring new money to their communities, right? Local communities, and to their local economy. And this new money generate revenue and support local jobs and provide income to local households. So just to give you an example of how big an airport ecosystem is, we'll take Atlanta Airport, right? It is the biggest in the world, the busiest, but it has more than 100 million passengers a year. A lot. It's a beast. About 300,000 every day. So to support such an operation, Atlanta Airport actually employs over 60,000 people, and it's making it the biggest employer in the whole state of Georgia.
Wow.
Now imagine, right? Just take a big step and think, how many employees do you have in your organization? And then think about Atlanta Airport having 60,000 employees. It is crazy. So what an impact a drone disruption will cause to such big operation. And that's what they're worried about.
You know, you're right. So many times I think as a consumer, as a customer, we just think about ourselves and we don't really think about the impacts these incidents have on the pilots, on the crew, on those other 60,000 people just at the Atlanta airport that you mentioned. But, you know, Ilana, you mentioned, I think, the key word earlier, which is safety. And at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about here, right? The economic disruptions are one thing, safety is quite another, and that is absolutely the FAA's purview. So I believe we have a little video to roll here as well.
Reports of an incident between a plane and a drone or a flight delay due to drones encroaching on an airport's airspace have become much too common. U.S. airspace depends on smooth, uninterrupted aircraft operations. Sensitive environments require a safe and innovative anti-drone defense. Radars sometimes generate false positives, while jammer-based solutions can disrupt an airport's communication systems, and kinetic counter-drone solutions may cause collateral damage. D-Fend Solutions counter-drone cyber detection technology, when allowed by regulations and performed by authorized officials, sends rogue drones along a predefined route to a safe landing zone, creating the safest possible experience. Detecting and, when permitted, mitigating the rogue drone threat quickly and efficiently is essential to maintaining safe airport operations. D-Fend's flagship Enforce Air solution empowers airports to detect threats without an excessive burden on human resources, disrupting communication systems, or damaging existing infrastructure. Enforce Air is proven at major international sites. Its ability to distinguish between authorized and unauthorized drones enables airports to identify and, when allowed by regulations, surgically remove hostile drones. Permitted drones can continue to survey airplanes and the airport's perimeter, even during system operation. Enforce Air. Control the drone to control the threat.
All right, we've talked about a little bit about security. We've talked about safety. Mark, you have written extensively about some of the unique issues at airports. You've written articles, blog posts about airport drone mitigation in particular, and the pluses and minuses of some legacy technologies, in particular jamming. What are the issues associated with those at airports?
With actual jamming, so the regard to jamming, the blog explains why jammers can be effective against basic drones, but they're indiscriminate, and they're also ineffective against more modern advanced drones. So to summarize the blog, which is quite large, jammers blast large amounts of power at drones, and this can also have a negative effect on aircraft systems, airport systems that we discussed, including communication systems, weather measuring systems, as well as Wi-Fi operated equipment at the airport. So in essence, they can be used, but all aircraft must stop moving, and certain airport systems have to be switched off to protect them. And airports have got a lot of real estate with huge slab-sided hangars and high towers, so being able to get a jammer into a position where it can be effective takes time, and drone move quickly, resulting in a game of cat and mouse. And remember, airports are businesses and time costs money. So the greatest risk is the jammer operator never truly knows how a drone will respond to an effective jamming. And they're not always a safe outcome neither. It may land immediately, but if it does land, what's it going to land on top of? Or it may return to the home location, but which way will it fly? Will it fly into something like air traffic control? It may simply crash, and that could be into critical equipment or aircraft. It could fly in an erratic manner, out of control, or it could fly from the wrong direction, especially when the GPS signal has been jammed. If the outcome is that the jammer operator desires the drone to return home, the pilot gets it back and then can use the drone to re-attack, because the jamming is only effective when it's in its sphere where the drone is. But the most severe outcome is a result of the owner hacking their drone. Following YouTube videos, drones are easily hacked by their owners, and they could program the home location to be the airport. So once it's jammed, the drone's program could cause it to crash into the fuel farm, the air traffic control, the navigation aid, or an aircraft. And I concluded in the blog by saying that handheld jammers are the best conventional, and I say conventional, rogue drone mitigation solution. But with all things considered, it's not truly a viable solution for airports, as it comes with huge drawbacks and the risks are just unacceptably high. The only way to guarantee a safe outcome is to take control off the pilot and land the drone in a safe place using RF cyber-takeover technology, because jamming is a thing of the past now.
Well, and you actually wrote an article about I think the title is Air Jamming Needs a Takeover. I love that title. So tell us what you mean by that.
In effect, with regards to taking it over?
Yes. So you talked about your RF cyber takeover technology. I think that's what your blog post that's titled "Airport Jamming Needs a Takeover" is all about. So let's dig a little deeper. And before we do that, maybe a great intro to this is a question we have from the audience. So we've got Adrian. I'm not going to even pronounce the last name there. Sorry, Adrian, because I will absolutely butcher that. But it's a good question. How dangerous and unpleasant can a counter UAS platform be for other means of communication? Especially because you alluded to this, Mark, especially when we talk about RF, radio frequency. I have the impression these quote unquote small issues are not discussed properly. There are many customers looking for counter UAS solutions that forget the impact on the RF range. So tell us about that. You're talking about your cyber solution. How does it work vis-a-vis other RF frequencies in the area specifically?
So if you take conventional jamming, where you are pumping out a huge amount of power, that's indiscriminate. So it will, hopefully, if it's within the right range, block out all communications to and from that drone. That includes the GPS signal. But as it's going out and you've got that cone of energy, it will also attack friendly drones. And as I mentioned, it'll have Wi-Fi and the others. So you're going to have systems like garages opening and closing, doors being opened, security gates being activated, and it will block out some communications. It will interrupt some measuring equipment. So that's how that operates. Enforce Air doesn't do this. So it doesn't send out a huge amount of energy at all. What it does is it listens to the frequency and it detects a drone. So we're just listening passively. So there's no effect on any other RF users at all while we listen. So we can detect, track, and identify. And in the UK, before we were allowed to use it at an airport, we had to go through some stringent testing for what we call victim systems. What systems are using RF energy that are on the airport or on an aircraft that we're actually going to be transmitting with our own system. And at an airport with the no air traffic but aircraft on the ground, we used our transmission, having been tested in an anechoic chamber before, and we transmitted and took our drones live on that airport. And there was absolutely zero effect on any aircraft systems or any airport systems, because it's not designed that way.
Well, speaking of design, I'm looking at Ilana's background, which, by the way, I love the Dawn background there. But also she's got one of the configurations for Enforce Air. So that's really my next question. What are the different configurations of the system in an airport environment specifically? And
do you want Mark?
Well, whoever is best. I'm going off of slides here, so I apologize. I don't have the designated person, but I think we also have a picture of an airport use case. There we go.
Yeah, pick that one up. So the different components and configurations is, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to protect the airport estate as a primary task, that airport ground. And we can do that with omnidirectional systems, all linked together, which will cover the airport state. So it's like blotting. Each one goes over the other till you have a full circle or a shape all the way around That means that any drone entering that airport area inside that perimeter fence can be dealt with. You've then got to protect the takeoff and landing flight paths to and from the airport. So you'd use longer range directional systems that are pointing out along the flight paths to protect that airspace, because the most critical part of any flight is the takeoff and the landing. And that's the approach to land and just after takeoff when they're conducting all their checks. After that, you've got to protect the air traffic control zone, the airspace around the airport, which is quite large, 5 miles, sometimes greater, depending on how many airfields you've got located together. And that can be difficult with distances. So you could have a mobile vehicle system fitted to the vehicles, and that will enable the police to respond to drones being operated off the estate and not within the approach flight paths, but within that controlled airspace. So they're able to respond. And once you've got that area sewn up, you need a command and control, so all counter-UAS threats can be dealt with quickly. So you need a multi-sensor command and control that will take the feed from various systems and blend them into an individual picture, one holistic counter-UAS threat picture for detection and mitigation. And if that works, you'll then gain the trust, and that's the final part. The system should be robust, it needs to be reliable, it needs to be repeatable with no false alarms or errors. So the operator's got complete trust in what they're seeing and dealing with.
Well, it also sounds like it needs to be agile, and I believe this is our final short video to show during the show.
Clueless and malicious drone pilots present airports with an array of challenging situations. No two situations are the same, so agility and flexibility are key. Airports require adaptability to combat frequent unauthorized drone activity. D-Fend Solutions offers multiple deployment options to suit all airport needs. D-Fend's proven counter-drone cyber detection solution, Enforce Air, enables airports to detect and, when allowed by regulations and performed by authorized officials, mitigate rogue drone threats safely and efficiently, preserving continuity. D-Fend's long-range directional kit provides a unique dual-sensor solution. It protects takeoff and landing air corridors, offering long-distance coverage that is critical to airports. D-Fend's high-altitude stationary deployment kit can detect drones flying in from the horizon or down below, offering 360-degree coverage of the airport premises, while the vehicle kit facilitates a portable bubble of protection as situations evolve. D-Fend's different deployment options allow for unimpeded airport operations. The hardware is lightweight and compact and can be rapidly taken apart, moved, and reassembled in minutes. Enforce Air. Control the drone to control the threat.
All right, excellent. You know, we started the show talking about the counter-UAS ARC, and this is the second more recent ARC in the United States. We had a remote identification ARC a few years ago. For those that track this industry, that ARC produced a pretty significant report. A notice of public rulemaking ensued, 53,000 comments. The final rule was published in January 2021. And then there was a legal challenge. And now, I think it was about a year ago when finally the court decided in favor of the FAA with regards to that legal challenge. And so for manufacturers, there was a little grace period given to them. They were supposed to be remote ID compliant by last September. They were given basically some discretionary time through December to become compliant. And now, as of September, this is like the latest buzz, right? Everybody's talking about this because it's right around the corner. Remote ID, all pilots that are flying outside of what they call federally recognized identification area, supposed to be remote ID compliant. So what is the impact of remote ID on this counter-UAS solution?
Well, sorry for being frank, but not much. It is a step in the right direction, right? I see this as another tool in the toolbox of an operator of a counter-UAS technology. But the one thing that we need to bear in mind, it does not predict intent. Whoever wants to comply and play by the book will do it. So it is a great thing to have. it gives you a good situational awareness, especially at and around airports. But there's deeper issues that an operator need to deal with to predict the intent and act on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a friend of yours and mine, Aerovigilance, and the guys at Counter UAS, Hub, Tom Adams and Casey Flanagan. Tom and I just co-authored a white paper about basically what remote ID is and what it isn't. And frankly, it's just one data point of many. Just because you may not be receiving a remote ID signal doesn't mean the drone isn't beaming one out. There's a possibility that the sensors to pick it up are not dense enough, and there's a whole bunch of things we talk about, so check that out. Absolutely. But bottom line is Enforce Air works independent of remote ID but also incorporates it. So I think that's a really important foot stomp thing to leave folks with. But let's talk about a little bit about the state of the art of counter drone options at airports in the UK. Mark, tell us a little bit about that.
So we've had a journey which really started with the Gatwick incident in December 2018, which went global. And from there, they focused on detect, track, and identify systems. They were quickly deployed, but they didn't actually counter the threat. You actually need the mitigation. So we call it DTI and then the mitigation. So the UK government set up the Rapid Innovation Cell to test systems able to counter the threat. Systems were then added to the government's approved equipment list. So critical national infrastructure security professionals could choose what they wanted, and N4 was put on that list straight away. Airports, though, are more sensitive, and as we've learned, transmitting an airport and actually taking over an air vehicle at an airport provides a huge challenge and a risk that the government weren't prepared to accept just because it's on the equipment list. So testing that to be completed, and it will always be completed by system type. You'll never get a blanket. Cyber is allowed to be used. Every system is going to have to be tested. So Enforce Air was tested in an anechoic chamber first to make sure they knew exactly what it was transmitting. And once they trusted that it wasn't going to send out something it shouldn't, it was then tested in a benign area to make sure it did what we said it could do. The testing was completed at an airport which was close to air traffic out of hours, but with the airport systems running so they could assess any interference. And that was successful. And only after this was completed last year was it possible to say it was safe, which Enforce Air is. So now we've got a system able to mitigate the threat to an airport. The legal aspects then had to come into force. And lucky for us, the UK has been working towards this for a while. And any police force, including airport police, can apply for a Part 3 to use Enforce Air in mitigation. So the future in the UK is to migrate this responsibility from the police to counter-UAS airport security teams, which will free up the police to focus on policing matters. So currently, in a nutshell, we've gone through that. We've had the system tested. It's able to be used. It was employed and used, and the police just had to apply for a Part 3 to use it. So that system is now operational and can be used. And of course, we want to move that towards security professionals.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got counter UAS envy, I guess, for the UK because we are not quite there. As Ilana said, we're just kind of discussing what the process, if you will, should be in the United States right now, other than the handful of federal authorities. And I love the fact that this Part 3 that you mentioned and Martin Broomhead did earlier is something that the local police can apply for once that system is approved. I hope people are listening out there in Congress and will think about, hey, folks are out there around the world are actually using this kind of very precise technology successfully, and they have a process for it that's working. So yay for the UK. I'm happy for that. And like I said, I'm envious. So at the end of the day, what is the goal going forward? Like, in other words, you have this cyber takeover solution. What is the ultimate goal of what you're trying to achieve with Enforce Air? And I think I'm gonna hand that over to Ilana.
Sure, absolutely. Right. And this is something that Mark is chanting all the time. So sorry, Mark, I'm taking your perfect paraphrasing of our ultimate goal, right? So airports should be contained with their county-U.S. mission statement. It was, Mark always says that if he was to write a mission statement for an airport, it will be that counter-UAS solution will provide early detection without false alarms, right? We've seen a lot of false alarms. So it is important for the airport operator not to burden the operator as well, or the manpower. So no false alarms and rapid mitigation with no error, right? To ensure the uninterrupted operation, and all the 3 videos talk about continuity of operation, right? Being proactive to future-proof against evolving drone threats, because they're always evolving. Always someone will find a way to hack or do something, as we see us advancing regulation and doing something like remote ID. Some people find their way around it. So it is important. So the goal is to always stay one step ahead, or at least try to.
Well, that's probably a great lead into this next question, because staying one step ahead is a challenge. I mean, people are super creative. A new technology comes out, there's a way to defeat it, then there's another way to counter that, and then another way to defeat it. So, what would you say? And I think this one goes to Mark. What would you say is the greatest challenge to counter U.S. systems in the future?
Artificial intelligence. They're always going to transmit, and so the real key is artificial intelligence. And for legacy systems like jamming, we're already seeing the introduction of AI having a detrimental effect. Autel's Evo Max series uses advanced flight control modules and algorithms, especially designed to counter RFI, EMI, and GPS spoofing. And I know of an incident in the UK where a jammer was completely ineffective against an Autel drone. They were firing at it for ages, nothing happened. And that's going to continue. Jamming isn't smart, and so as AI advances, the only real solution is to use a cyber solution to counter the smart drones, and that's the big challenge for the future.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, drones are essentially flying computers. I mean, people don't think about that, right? When you think about security and cybersecurity and all of these things, but that's exactly what they are. So we are getting so close to time right now. I want to make sure we get this question. Of course, how can professionals or prospective users and partners learn about D-Fend Solutions and collaborate with your efforts? Let's go with Ilana first in the US.
All right. So the basic is visit our website, contact us, contact me. I'm happy to talk to anyone and brainstorm. I think that I am in an educational mode, spreading the word and also listening to what other people has to say based on their experiences, right? And we also do demos. Invite us. I'm happy to come over. Hopefully it's a nice destination, and demo and show you that technology. So absolutely contact us.
All right, very good. How about in the UK, Mark?
It's exactly the same, and then I think really is within the professional communities to understand that D-Fend doesn't do anything else. We don't mess around with radars, EO, or anything like that. We have one role, and that role is to provide a cyber solution. So we've got big clients like the DoD, the MOD, clients all across the world, and the thing that they're after is to ensure that we stay ahead of the threat. So if someone wants to learn what they can do and they're worried about the future, because no one wants to buy big pieces of equipment and then worry about what it's going to be a legacy system in a year, come and talk to us. Find us on LinkedIn, find us on the page, however you contact us, make contact. We'll be able to put you in touch with the right person, and then we'll get you to a demonstration. And seeing is believing.
Yeah, you mentioned some of these other technologies, whereas you don't necessarily do them. You can integrate with them, and that's also what I love about D-Fend Solutions and Enforce Air. Last month we had SAIC as our month sponsor, and I know that that's a company that you guys have partnered with on the Valkyrie system, working with the United States Army and others, Light Eye and a couple other companies. So, just want to make sure we also put that out there, that this is not necessarily a standalone solution. It can be, but it also can be part of a layered defense and part of an integrated solution. So let's see what else. There is a question from Adam Durham. How about RF 5G solution? I don't know if we have time for this question, but why don't we reach out, Adam? I'm sorry, we are at time, and my producer is very strict about this. So we're gonna close it out now, and we will absolutely answer this later. So I encourage you to connect with Mark or Ilana, and we'll get that question answered for you. And everybody, thank you so much for joining in. Ilana, Mark, thanks for joining us today. It was so great to see you both. And have a wonderful rest of your week. Everybody out there, we are out here.